Thanks, John. I'm Randy Hansen. In World News headlines today, unelected technocrats take control of Italy, Greece as debt crisis grows. And Arab League suspends Syria amid ongoing violent crackdown. And Israel behind deadly explosion at Iran arms depot, report says. And Obama says no options off the table with Iran. Republican presidential candidates accuse Obama of being too soft on Iran. And Occupy Oakland braces for massive police raid. And Portland arrests over 50 Occupy demonstrators. And Occupy Wall Street protesters in New York City hold Veterans Day march. And police crack down on Occupy protests across the country. And Occupy protesters, an Iraq war veteran, Scott Olson, leaves hospital, releases first statement since injury. And Brazil floods Rio de Janeiro's largest slum with thousands of troops in planned security operation. And Sudan accused of bombing refugee camp in South Sudan, killing 12. And over 17% of adults over 25 have no health insurance. Bush-era executive order to form military commissions for terror suspects reaches 10th anniversary. But before these stories, GVTV News would like to thank one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. Today's first world news story, unelected technocrats have taken over Italy and Greece as the two countries continue to battle a growing debt crisis. In Italy, former European Commissioner Mario Monti has replaced former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, who resigned on Saturday. In Greece, Lucas Papadamos, a former European Central Bank Vice President, has been sworn in as Prime Minister, replacing George Papandreou. Earlier yesterday, a group of protesters gathered in front of the Greek parliament accusing the new government of working in the interest of bankers. Inspectors from the International Monetary Fund, European Central Bank, and European Union are due to start arriving in Athens to push Greece to take the sweeping austerity measures. In Rome, people sang, danced, and opened bottles of champagne on Saturday following Berlusconi's resignation. An impromptu orchestra near the palace played the Hallelujah chorus with George Frederick Handel's Messiah soon after he stepped down. Berlusconi, not Handel. In news from the Middle East, the Arab League has suspended Syria after President Bashar al-Assad reneged on an offer to stop the violence crackdown on protesters and open a dialogue with the opposition. Over the past 7 months, Syrian forces have killed more than 3,500 people, although some estimates are much higher. Syria condemned the Arab League's decision, describing it as an extremely dangerous step, but Syrian exiles living in Jordan welcome the move. Azar Ghazi said the Syrian people have waited for this move from the Arab League for a long time. This is the start in a path for victory. We in exile are confident that the Syrian people will win in its peaceful revolution against Bashar and all his aides. 17 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard died on Saturday in a massive explosion at an ammunition depot west of Tehran. The dead included General Hassan Moghadam, a key figure in Iran's missile program. The explosion destroyed the base which housed Iran's stockpile of Shahab missiles, a military capable of reaching Israel. Iran said the explosion occurred while military personnel were transporting munitions, but Time magazine quotes an unnamed Western intelligence source saying the Israeli spy agency Mossad carried out the attack. The explosions at the ammunition dump west of Tehran occurred just days after the UN International Atomic Energy Agency released a report raising new concerns over what it calls possible military dimensions to Iran's nuclear activities. On Sunday, President Obama warned that no options are being taken off the table concerning Iran. And President Obama said the sanctions have enormous bite and enormous scope, and we're building off the platform that has already been established. The question is, are there additional measures that we can take? And we're going to explore every avenue to see if we can solve this issue diplomatically. I have said repeatedly, and I will say it today, we are not taking any options off the table, unquote. At a Republican presidential debate in South Carolina on Saturday, several contenders accused Obama of being too soft on Iran. Mitt Romney said, if we re-elect Barack Obama, Iran will have a nuclear weapon, and if we elect Mitt Romney, if you elect me as the next president, we will not have a nuclear weapon. Scott Pelley asked him, but sir, you just described where we are today, and what you're going to do, however he said it, how do you prevent them from obtaining a nuclear weapon? And he replied, well, it's worth putting in place crippling sanctions. It's worth working with insurgents in the country to encourage regime change in the country. If all else fails, if all of the work that we've done there, nothing else that we can do besides take military action, then of course you take military action. It is unacceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who is rising in the Republican polls, was also asked about Iran, and he said, I agree entirely with Governor Romney. If in the end, despite all of those things, the dictatorship persists, you have to take whatever steps are necessary to break its capacity to have a nuclear weapon. Republican Representative Michelle Bachmann accused President Obama of abandoning Israel in a time when it could become the target of a nuclear war. And she said, the table is being set for a worldwide nuclear war against Israel, and if there's anything we know, President Obama has been more than willing to stand with Occupy Wall Street, but he hasn't been willing to stand with Israel. Israel looks at President Obama and they do not see a friend. Republican Representative Ron Paul offered a different take on the dealing with Iran. He said, I'm afraid that what's going on right now is similar to war propaganda that went on against Iraq. And you know, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. It was orchestrated. It was, to me, a tragedy of what's happened these past 10 years, the death and destruction, the $4 trillion in debt. So no, it's not worthwhile going to war. If you do, you get a declaration of war, you fight it, you win it, and get it over with. Get it. And the story that I got, they didn't mention Herman Cain because he's a leader. Nobody wants to talk about him. Occupy Oakland protesters are braced for morning raid. Hundreds of protesters assembled to defend the Occupy Oakland encampment. Fear of eviction comes after a series of requests to vacate were issued from City Hall and local businesses. On Thursday, a 25-year-old man who had spent a few days in the park was attacked and shot to death by two unidentified individuals. The killing exacerbated existing tensions between the encampment and city officials. Oakland has reportedly agreed to pay for up to 1,000 officers to be deployed over the next 3 days, making it the largest and most expensive police operation in the city in recent memory. Police in Portland, Oregon encountered an estimated 1,000 Occupy protesters Sunday afternoon in an attempt to shut down their weeks-old encampment. Nearly a dozen law enforcement agencies dispatched more than 300 officers for the eviction after Mayor Sam Adams ordered the camp shut down. More than 50 arrests were made. In New York City, Occupy demonstrators held a Veterans Day march through Lower Manhattan on Friday. The march ended at Civic Center Park, where a number of musicians, including Joan Baez, performed. Joan Baez, the musician, said, let's drink to the lowly of birth, spare a thought for the ragtaggy people. Let's drink to the salt of the earth, let's drink to the hardworking people, let's drink to the salt of the earth. Numerous veterans spoke out against war and declared their support for Occupy Wall Street. Iraq War veteran Sergeant Shamar Thomas described the conditions veterans face when they returned from service overseas and said, to come home to a nation where we don't have a job automatically set up, to where, you know, they have Marines getting $1,900 to fight in a war when congressmen and politicians are making six figures, it just shows how much respect this country has for the veteran, and we should be doing a lot more. In other Occupy Wall Street news, police departments around the country conducted a number of arrests over the weekend. In St. Louis, Missouri, authorities arrested 27 people who had set up camp at a downtown plaza. In Salt Lake City, Utah, 15 people were arrested. In Denver, Colorado, police arrested a half dozen protesters and removed items such as mattresses, cooking grills, and tents from city sidewalks. In California, San Francisco police claimed 2 officers were attacked by a pair of protesters in separate incidents, resulting in injuries to the officers. Neither of the alleged assailants were apprehended. And in Albany, New York, roughly 24 demonstrators were arrested by state troopers after breaking an 11 p.m. curfew at Lafayette Park, a piece of state-owned property. And in other Occupy news, Iraq War veteran Scott Olson has released his first public statement since being shot in the head by a police projectile during an Occupy Oakland protest nearly 3 weeks ago. Olson had been released from the hospital but is still struggling to speak. A photo has also been released showing Scott Olson smiling with a neck brace on and a scar on his forehead. In the message, Olson wrote, "I'm feeling a lot better with the long road in front of me. After my freedom of speech was quite literally taken from me, my speech is coming back, but I've got a lot of work to do with rehab." Olson went on to write, "Thank you all for your support. It has meant the world to me. You'll be hearing more from me in the near future, and soon enough we'll see you in our streets." In Brazil, 3,000 troops backed by helicopters and armored vehicles invaded Rio de Janeiro's largest slum on Sunday in a security operation ahead of the World Cup 2014 and the Olympics 2 years later. The raid of the hillside favela began at 4 a.m. Troops encountered no resistance. The authorities had announced their plans days in advance. And Sudan is being accused of bombing a refugee camp in the newly formed nation of South Sudan, killing at least 12 people. Bomb hit a region where more than 20,000 refugees live. Growing violence along the border between the two nations has forced Oxfam to withdraw aid workers from the area. Hervé Ladsos is the chief of the UN peacekeeping in the region and he said, on the 9th of November, UNMISS was informed by governments of South Sudan officials that up to 9 bombs had been dropped in the areas of Bukavu and Yafta in the Maben County, Upper Nile State, that is to say, very near the border with Blue Nile State. Areas are gathering points for tens of thousands of refugees from the fighting in Blue Nile State. Humanitarian partners purported approximately 55,000 people, including refugees, returnees, and internally displaced persons, are currently on the move as a result of the bombing. A new study has found 17.3% of adults over the age of 25 in the States have no health insurance, up nearly 3 percentage points over the past 3 years. Well, even if you have insurance, then you have to find a doctor that'll take insurance. Well, at least if it's like Medi-Cal. Sunday marked the 10th anniversary of President George W. Bush's executive order to form military commissions to try prisoners captured in the War on Terror. One of the strongest critics of the military tribunal has become retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Mo Davis, a former chief prosecutor for the Gitmo tribunals. And he said, "I think we've botched this so bad that we're past the point of redemption." Attorney Michael Ratner of the Center for Constitutional Rights compared Bush's executive order to a coup d'etat. Under the order, the president gave himself the authority to direct the capture of any non-citizen anywhere in the world allegedly involved in international terrorism and detain that person indefinitely without access to remedy of habeas corpus. Despite widespread criticism of the tribunal system, President Obama has backed the use of the tribunals to try prisoners at Guantanamo. Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri was arraigned last week on the 2000 bombing of the USS Cole off the coast of Yemen. And that's it for the World News today. Another thanks to one of our underwriters who support your only visual video news media in Nevada County. You guessed it, it's us, GVTV News.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
That's right, it's time for the police blotter. Pictures in the blotter not from these actual events, but used for visual aid only. Grass Valley Police Department on Wednesday. 8:36 a.m., a caller from the 200 block of Sutton Way reported a man driving without a license. At 8:58 a.m., a woman from 200 block of Cypress Hill Drive reported her house was burglarized and silverware and a gold chain and a jar of change were stolen. 10:30 a.m., caller from 500 block of Sutton Way reported a man singing and camping behind a business. He was advised to move on. And 1:35 p.m., caller from Sutton Way reported possible road rage with a woman in a vehicle chasing a man in a truck. And 2:03 p.m., a caller from 1400 block of Sedgeworth Way reported theft of medications. And 2:23 p.m., a woman from 100 block of Neal Street reported a boy went through her work apron while she was taking a break. And 2:54 p.m., a caller from 1100 block of East Main Street reported a person doing drugs in a bathroom. And 3:28 p.m., caller from 300 block of Pleasant Street reported juveniles as young as 12 were smoking marijuana. And 4:39 p.m., caller from Sierra College reported a vehicle window had been smashed and an iPod stolen. And 7:53 p.m., caller from Hennessy School reported theft and vandalism of a play structure with 3 men fleeing the scene. 9:02 p.m., caller from 300 block of Bennett Street reported a physical fight. It was found to have been verbal only. And Thursday, 1:02 a.m., caller from 100 block of Lucas Lane reported loud music. Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Wednesday, 11:28 a.m., caller from 10,000 block of Happy Dale Court reported a vehicle accident caused by a fight inside the vehicle. 11:52 a.m., caller from 11,000 block of Glen Meadow Drive reported possible mail fraud. And 12:07 p.m., caller from Comby Road reported 3 transients hiding behind a bank. They were gone when deputies arrived. And 12:10 p.m., caller from 13,000 block of Dead Man's Flat Road reported theft of numerous items. And 12:30 p.m., caller from a boy from Sunrise Road reported being underage and drinking and said he wanted to go to jail because he heard it was cool. He could not be located. And 3:03 p.m., juvenile was cited for possession of marijuana at Magnolia Intermediate School. At 3:31 p.m., caller from Highway 49 and Round Valley Road reported a man lying in the road. At 3:46 p.m., caller from Adams Avenue and Rough and Ready Highway reported a juvenile was bitten by a dog. And 5:11 p.m., caller from Highway 49 and West McKnight Way reported a dispute on their side of a road involving 2 vehicles. They could not be located. 5:35 p.m., caller from Lowell Hill and Chicago Park Powerhouse Roads reported 2 or 3 people shooting in a creek bed. And 7:59 p.m., caller from North Ponderosa Way reported a person threatened to assault 2 children and might have pushed one. And Thursday, 5:57 a.m., caller from 18,000 block of Old Coach Way reported theft of a Honda Civic. And that's it for the blotter today. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. That girl looks familiar. In today's local news headlines, Occupy movement getting the message out. In a story written by Tom Keller, there's much unrest in the world these days concerning the economic status quo and those who govern. The news has been full of uprising and discontent, everything from the Arab Spring to the formation of the Tea Party and the recent Occupy Wall Street movement, or Occupy movement as it is now being called, appears to be adding fuel to the already massive fire. For those who have been living in a cave for the last few months, the occupation movement began in New York City in September when a group of protesters began showing up at Zuccotti Park in New York's financial district to protest financial inequality between the haves and the have-nots. Since that time, Occupy movement demonstrations have been held in more than 70 major U.S. cities and 600 communities. Obviously, the original message has hit a nerve for many. Nevada County has seen its own version of the Occupy movement coalesce into an active chapter of demonstrators peacefully holding Wednesday afternoon marches in both Grass Valley and Nevada City. Still, ask someone on the street exactly what the Occupy movement stands for, and you're just likely to get a quizzical look as you look for a definitive answer. Part of the ID problem for the Occupy movement has been that many different factions have seen the movement as a vehicle for getting their own divergent messages. Everyone from environmentalists to anti-war activists have been seen adding their voices to the protests. Perhaps also helping to muddy the water has been the conservative media's attempt to generalize the protesters into being a bunch of drug-addled, bongo-playing, unemployed hippies. But that characterization of the Occupy movement would seem grossly inaccurate, sort of like what they think of the Tea Party. Pretty inaccurate, too. The crowd appears an eclectic mix of both young and old. Like most of us, local volunteer Heather Keesby first learned of the movement while watching TV. It was started to hit the mainstream media, and I said, "Wow, that looks interesting," she said. "I certainly thought that there was something to it, but wasn't very clear about what it was yet." Then in early October, Joe Crane, a friend of mine, said, "Hey, let's get together and talk about this and see what kind of support our small town can give." Handful showed up for the initial planning meeting in Pioneer Park. Rally was soon scheduled. To the surprise of the Keesby and her colleagues, the event drew not the 30-40 people expected, but more than 300. It was an astounding amount of support that came out, Keesby said. The general consensus of the people was that something is not right with the system. The feeling was, let's get together and see where this is going to take us. Keesby has been charged with helping get the group's message out to the press. She has been a resident of Nevada County for 5 years and a local small business owner operating the Nevada City Herb and Tea Company, with her products carried in locations like SPD Market and Cafe Mecca. That was our short advertisement. Keesby recognizes the possible problem with not being able to narrowly define the mission of the Occupy movement, but believes it's actually part of the movement's strength rather than a liability. The movement does seem really open-ended rather than having a bunch of specifics at the moment. Keesby said, it is benefit, because what we're really saying is that no, there's not just one solution. If we point towards just one problem and say, we'll fix that one thing, then we would be missing all those other issues that surround it. Keesby stresses it's important people realize the local chapter of the Occupy movement is connected to what is happened nationally, but at the same time it's hard at work on issues that are specific to local area. This has become a sort of autonomous movement in the sense that each occupation chapter is going through its own consensus process. We hold General Assembly meetings where we come together and ask, what do we stand for and what do we want to represent? We get a flood of ideas and great information. Basically, each occupation group is doing its own thing. Here in Nevada County, we are coming up with our own ideas, agenda, and goals. Keesby encourages those still on the fence about the Occupy movement this way. Each person needs to realize that their voice is important. We are very solidly behind the idea that we don't want to make this about one particular agenda. We want everyone to feel like their voice has been heard, their ideas incorporated into our consensus process. Today at Occupy Wall Street, Nevada County has held 5 official rallies, each reportedly attended by several hundred participants. For more information, go to occupywallstreetnc.org. Got a lot of good information there. And we always cover these events when we can. That's it for local news. GVTV News, like Christopher's Old World Deli and Catering Company, has brought its delicious food and service downtown Grass Valley. Do you like desserts? They got them. You like international style lunches? They got them. Christopher's Deli and Catering for parties, get-togethers, weddings, or whatever. Open 7 days a week.